Okay, so this is character number 3. I've done Andrea, I've done Ron, and now I'm going to do Ron's brother, Sam, because I think it's very on theme to continue. So in case you haven't watched any of the other videos, I've been doing it's pretty much like a POV discussion. It's a talk about a perspective or a situation of a character that almost 95% of the audience members that watch this show all don't fuck with. You know what I mean? With Andrea, it was how easily she was manipulated by the governor. With Ron, it was all of his anti-teen bullshit, his beef with Rick, his beef with Carl. And with Sam, I'm going to talk about the hate that he gets for how he reacts to the world that is going on. Like, I'm like 99.9999999% sure everybody gets so annoyed with Sam. I think the argument is, which is an argument that I had when I've watched this show several times, but like, I think it took, not this rewatch, it was actually a previous rewatch that I had that made me really understand Sam's character a little more and his perspective and like how he is viewing the world. Because could you imagine being, I have to double check his age. I just double checked. He's between the ages of 10 and 12. So we'll just go in the middle and say he's 11 years old. But even at 11 years old, could you imagine? Yes, there's an argument because there's Carl and how Carl adapted to the apocalypse. But there was such a different approach to how Lori and how Rick decided to teach Carl about the apocalyptic world and about gun safety and about what the walkers were capable of. I feel like they were a little more, while they were still like safe with the child and they still wanted Carl to like revel in his childhood, they were still realistic. And I feel like even at Carl's young age, when he was probably Sam's age, understood more about the apocalypse and the walkers and all that stuff than Sam did. And the apocalypse has been going on longer at this point that Sam is the same age as Carl. But in Sam's defense, like I said, this is one of those series where it's putting yourself in their shoes and trying to view all the information and all the facts as if you were Sam. And could you imagine you're living in this house with your mom, your dad, your brother, and you're living in this community that still has get-togethers, still has barbecues, still has like, not as many like they're not necessarily having birthday parties and like as regular life as it was before, but it still was very safe. And his mom was very adamant and it's pretend. Just pretend it's fake. Pretend you're strong. Pretend you're somebody else. And that always blew my mind. Even before I became like a parent. And especially more as a parent, I don't think that Jess did the right approach with how she decided to go about the apocalypse with her family. I mean, it wasn't just her. It was obviously the husband, too. What is his name? I'm like blanking. Pete. It was both her and Pete. Obviously, both decided that going about life this way was the right approach. But, like, the more I watch it, the more I'm almost like, you guys set up Sam to fail. Jess and Pete set Sam up to fail. It wasn't Ron's responsibility, so I can't say that Ron is at all at fault. But even Ron had a little bit of part to play in how his brother came to be, because even if Jess and Pete decided, oh, we're gonna let him be a kid and we're gonna pretend it's all fake, even if Pete and Jesse decided to do that, right? I felt like, not that it was Ron's responsibility necessarily, but I felt there was some sense of like, you didn't look out for your brother in the slightest. Like Ron, you could almost say they weren't siblings at some point, because the idea that he like continued to go about life and go about his day and do all these things with everybody else, and then just kind of like left his brother alone all the time and like solo and to like box this shit out alone. He knew how Pete was. He knew how his mom was in regards to like how much she likes to cover up and how much she liked to pretend things were better than they actually were, which kind of is sad because it goes into like her abuse and her psychology and shit like that, because she's probably been playing pretend with Sam long before the apocalypse happened, you know what I mean? But still, like, I think they failed Sam. I think Pete and Jesse failed Sam. I think if it wasn't for the fact that Ron was older, they would have failed him as well. But the fact that it took Rick showing up to be like, let's teach people how to shoot, for her to be like, I'm going to teach my sons how to shoot. The fact that this like, she just like very much blinded her son to the realities of what was going on. And I'm not saying she should have necessarily told him everything, but I think she should have very much expressed that this was real, that the world that used to be isn't a thing anymore, unfortunately, and some of the aspects of his new reality. But her continuing to play pretend, play house, play school, play makeup, like, was just insane. Was actually fucking so unsafe and such a bad move on her as a mom. And I try not to judge the parents in the apocalyptic world, because it's so much harder to like parents when all of this is happening. But no, when you see how you can be with a child, like when you see Carl, when you see some of the other kids as the show progresses in Walking Dead or Fear the Walking Dead, it goes to show kids are capable of like adapting if you give them the chance to learn and to be open to what is actually going on around them.